Yo, welcome back to the channel. Kamusta sa inyong lahat? If you thought Chakona is just another support character who just got sandwiched between two powerhouse units, think again. In today's video, I'm going to break down Chakona's full value using the info we have so far. Whether you're on the fence or already hoarding resources like a doomsday prepper, this guide will help you decide if Chakona's about to be your next must-pull. Is she worth skipping this month's rent or no? Let's find out together. First up, her damage potential. Chakona fits the sub-DPS buffer archetype, which is just a fancy way of saying she buffs your main DPS while dealing significant damage herself. Her liberation scaling is expected to hit around 1100% at level 10. Is that cosmic? No. But for a character whose job isn't to carry, it's kind of unhinged. Her forte circuit slaps 11 times because 10 just wasn't chaotic enough, right? With the juiciest hit scaling up to 315.9%. Add the passive that stacks 30% more heavy attack damage on top, and you're basically enabling her to cosplay as a main DPS at family gatherings. And if RNGesus graces you with heavy attack substats, she doesn't just climb the damage rankings, she ascends, both spiritually and numerically, validating every primo gem you panic spent before her banner even dropped. Her best in-slot echo is most likely Gust of Welkin, because if you're not dealing arrow erosion damage in 2025, what the heck are you even doing? This set increases the arrow damage of other arrow resonators and lets Chakona live her best erosion life. But of course, there's a catch. It locks her into arrow or erosion comps, harder than a gotcha whale locking their life savings into a limited banner. So, unless you're fully committed to the arrow lifestyle, it's not exactly plug and play. If you want something more versatile, Empyrean Anthem and Moonlit Clouds are your safer, less emotionally risky options. Anthem gives a nice general damage buff, but only if Chakona crits, which means yes, you may need to crank her crit rate to 80% plus, just so your support can pretend to be a DPS. Totally normal, very balanced. Her utility revolves around applying arrow erosion and sprinkling in a bit of spectrofrazzle, both of which are becoming increasingly mandatory in the game's new obsession with stacking negative statuses like it's a seasonal trend. And if you're not applying a debuff every other second, you're practically grieving your team. Her resonance skill doesn't do much damage, which is gotcha speak for don't expect fireworks, but it's still crucial for energy regeneration and applying arrow erosion. Think of it as your boring but reliable group project partner. Not flashy, but the whole thing falls apart without them. The real brain teaser in her kit is the scaling. Chakona's build needs to somehow juggle both liberation damage bonus and heavy attack damage bonus, which is a polite way of saying you're going to suffer. It's doable, but only if you enjoy a bit of masochism and can pray to RNGesus hard enough to land substats from the 7th layer of Gotcha Hell. So, basically, when building her, you'd want crit, attack, energy regen, heavy attack bonus, and liberation damage bonus. You know, just the standard 5-course gourmet meal of stat requirements. Nothing too unreasonable, just everything. You could cheat a little by using a 3-cost echo with an energy regen main stat, which is like swapping your filet mignon for a protein bar. Technically efficient, but not exactly flavorful. Sure, it'll ding her arrow damage a bit, but that trade-off lets her keep up liberation uptime for those sweet bursts of coordinated damage, keeping your arrow team juiced and spiritually fulfilled. So, how does her debuffing work? Arrow erosion, which you may have seen on bosses like the Nightmare Monkey for example, applies stacks that deal damage over time every 3 seconds. Max stacks last for 15 seconds, Spectrofrazzle is slightly different. It applies stacks that deal damage and persist as long as they're being refreshed every 3 seconds. This subtle difference means Spectrofrazzle has better uptime if you can maintain it. This is important to note because Chakona applies arrow erosion via her intro, 4th basic attack, resonance skill, and her forte circuit. Even without her liberation, she can comfortably apply and maintain max stats through her regular field time. Once she uses liberation, she enters a state where she can apply either a Spectrofrazzle or arrow erosion over time. And if she leaves the battlefield, both will be applied to enemies. Based on what we've seen during the live stream, it suggests that these stacks apply every 2 seconds, up to 20 stacks, making for a full cycle of around 40 seconds. Thus, Chakona becomes valuable for Spectrofrazzle comps because she can apply Frazzle easily through her liberation. Zani, who consumes a Spectrofrazzle to charge her Blaze Forte bar, can benefit big time, though the timing of subsequent rotations may be tricky due to concerto energy gain mechanics. Still, if you manage your rotations well, Chakona is actually a much smoother enabler than probably Spectral Rover in some Zani team comps. Where she falls a bit short is in pure buffing. Her outro skill amplifies every erosion damage by 100% for 30 seconds. But currently, no unit scales off arrow erosion directly until Cartethyia arrives. However, when she starts a solo concert, either via her 4th basic or liberation, she grants a 24% arrow damage bonus to the team. This can benefit characters like Gian, Jianshin, and maybe even Alto. But Morty already feels Gian's sub DPS slot better by providing true damage amplification, and Alto prefers Sanwa's basic attack amplification. This makes Chakona a bit of a paradox. On paper, she's your dream arrow support. Buffs arrow damage, it slaps on some stylish DOTs and makes your team look good doing it. But in practice, she's more exclusive than a VIP lounge at an invite-only jazz club. She only fits arrow comps if the team is already moonlighting as status effect sommeliers. If they are, Chakona transform into their personal trainer, tour manager, and emotional support system all at once. If not, she's still good, just more opening act at the country fair than headliner at Coachella. She slots in perfectly with Aero Rover and Cartethyia, like the devs sent out engraved invitation for this exact trio, right? Its synergy so deliberate, you can practically hear that the sign team whispering, yes, this is the vibe. Now, on to her Forte circuit crowd control. In the live stream, we saw her heavy attack with full Forte stacks create a neat little vortex that pulls enemies in for a glorious 3 seconds. Useful? Definitely. In specific situations like Whimpering Waves or when dealing with mobs that think spreading out is a tactical advantage. But let's not pretend she's turning every battlefield into a gravitational black hole. In reality, most elite enemies in Wuthering Waves respond to grouping attempts the way cats respond to bat time. Pure, unfiltered resistance. So yeah, unless you're fighting the kind of enemies that fall over when someone sneezes, you're probably better off investing in wide AoE nukes. And let's face it, why bother when Cartethyia can do both, right? So, should you pull for her? Ciaccona is the only character who can consistently apply arrow erosion, making her basically future-proof, especially if you're pulling for Cartethyia. Any DPS that even remotely dreams of using this mechanic will desperately need someone like her. And let's talk about Spectrofrazzle, locked behind her liberation because nothing says premium support like a debuff that only works once she's done a weird, complicated transformation. She can be one of the most efficient enablers for units like Zani or even Phoebe. Actually, let's be real, Zani probably needs her more. Zani can't even generate her own frazzle without some help. which is like trying to bake a cake without the oven. Her ability to grant up to 39% arrow damage bonus also gives her a pretty solid buffing baseline. So yeah, she's basically the backstage crew that makes everything look easy. Chakona is not a one-size-fits-all unit, but she doesn't have to be. She's a specialized support for a mechanic that's clearly being baked into Wuthering Waves' long-term design. And in gacha games, betting on future mechanics often pays off big. If you found this helpful, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. Maraming salamat po, and I'll see you in my next one. Goodbye.